2023, about 8 months ago, the U.S. Surgeon General put out an advisory entitled Social Media and Youth Mental Health. Maybe several of you know about this. It doesn't get a lot of traction in the media for specific reasons, or didn't get a lot of traction in the media. There's a little splash for a week, and then everybody moves on, and we keep going. And I was so excited to see it, because I was like, oh yes. I mean, being where I am and having the context that I have, I see the impact of social media and cell phones and all of that stuff on kids. And I was like, maybe that's a push. Maybe that's a push in the right direction. And so previous advisories while we were growing up were gun violence, drug use, drunken driving, HIV/AIDS, obesity, smoking cigarettes. And that's a pretty tough list to add social media to, And this morning we'll discuss why I believe it's an appropriate addition. And before we get too far along, know that I will give you kind of a rollout plan of how you can handle this and say yes to it. Okay, I don't. If you're sitting on the side of, is this going to be totally me just bashing social media? No, I want you to go in with eyes wide open and equip you, empower you to make the most of that opportunity if you choose to go that way with your kid. Okay. And I will also give you plenty of anchor holds if you choose not to go that way with your kid to delay, and let them make that decision as they mature and grow. But I also plan to give you plenty of ideas as proactive parents of how we can be a part of the solution. So as I was preparing to speak to y'all, I had the idea that Allison and I that we treat our parenting a lot like an apprenticeship, and just think about, that visual. I love visuals, and it helps me to think, to see things. I'm a guy and very visual, and so that's part of that. But we've learned a lot of valuable lessons in our lives, that Allison and I have, just living it and being 46. There's a lot of experience that goes on there, right? We've been through a lot. And, some of you know my story of, my upbringing and, and all of this and being in this place. I'm just so thankful and reflective of the life experiences that God has given me. And we, as believers, we feel that we have found the key to a flourishing life. Not only to, eternity that's secured, but to living a flourishing life. And so, of course, we would want to give that to our kids. We would be. It would be a great joy to us to pass along something that was life-changing and eternal in nature to our own children. Like, that's how we feel about our faith. It's not something that we would say, just make up your mind on your own on this deal. I've chosen to do this. No, if you understand the power of salvation, you wouldn't leave that up, just to the whims of an immature child, right? And so we are passing on, actively passing on what we've learned to our kids, actively, intentionally. You might even say strategically, that's a thing that we do as a husband and a wife, couple, a team. In apprenticeship language, which is where my analogy, falls short. We would be the master in that situation, the master, and we are absolutely not, And so we make mistakes on a regular basis. We talk about these things. We argue with each other and do all the same stuff that you all do, So if there's any hints of they really have it together, oh my gosh, we do not, And so we are absolutely just trying to figure it out ourselves, but talking our way through it and pretty proactively. So, and so I was thinking about a master artist or a master woodworker, and how your kids are at your side and you're looking at the thing together and you're allowing them to do some of it and work it out and talk through it and ask questions, because there's nothing that's off limits, and nothing that's off limits. We have very real, deep conversations with our children, and we don't save them from too much. Just being honest with you. And so, even though we've mastered nothing, we've come a long way in our understandings, and we've got a lot of valuable lessons that we've been instructed by God to share, with our kids. And so let's look at that, because specifically, as you guys know, Deuteronomy 6, the Shema, as it's known to the Jewish people, is the basis of that. And so I'm going to read it. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And that's for us personally, right? I mean, that's what we are to do as believers. And these words I command to you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. This sounds like an apprenticeship to me. We talk about it regularly. Our dinner conversations often have faith and the exercising of that faith as a part of what we do every day. At the school, you might call it Christian worldview training, right? At our house, it's regular conversation, and it's Deuteronomy 6. It's living out that call that the Lord draws us in and says, talk about it. And as you've read those verses before, whenever I read them, it's like all the time. When you lay down and whenever you rise, whenever you walk around. It seems like that's what I do, all day, every day. I got up and I'm walking around, and I will eventually lay back down. What was I supposed to be doing in between that time? Well, I was supposed to be loving the Lord my God with all my heart, my soul, and my mind, and I was supposed to be passing that on to my kids. Like, that's what I was supposed to be doing. And so that's an apprenticeship. Come beside me. Let's work on life together for the short time that you'll be in our home. And I'll hope that experience, that you'll feel somewhat equipped for the rest of the journey, which is yours, young person, after you leave the house. And that's hard, right? I mean, gosh, I'm looking at Chris, who, Emma is going to leave next year. And I remember Emma as a little girl, and it hurts, right? Like, I don't want to pull on too many heartstrings. I know there's a lot of females in here. But it's a real deal, I mean, I won't belabor it. You already get it. If I do, then you all be crying. We don't need that. So, I know, me, I'll be crying too. So, but I'm going to carry the analogy on a little bit further, and I would say that we include some local craftsmen, some fellow craftsmen that we partner with in our apprenticeship program. And so some other families that have similar skills and values. Our church, we're Christ Chapel people, and so we are partnered with our church in that process, in that apprenticeship program, if you will. And a school that matches our ethos, and that echoes much of what we teach in our home apprenticeship program, here at SCS. And so the home, the church, and the school, this is in our last Family Matters of last year. Chris, talked specifically about the cord of three strands that isn't easily broken. That's the cord of three strands, the home, the church, and the school. Those three things woven together is about as good as you can do as a parent in trying to train your children in the way they should go. It's about as good as you can do. And to be a proactive, involved parent with your kids at your house, to have them involved in church where that same thing's happening, and have them involved in school where that same thing's happening. I mean, it's taking some of the rolling the dice out of it, and we're doing our best, in those things. I think it helps to understand that viewpoint as we dive into the conversation. Just to have that backdrop, I think, is the appropriate framing for our brain, and how I reference things that matter to our family, since this is Family Matters. So obviously being raised by two Christian school educators, maybe a little bit different context. We may, dive deep into this kind of stuff because it's our job. And it is in a lot of respects. My job is to advance the mission of the school. Well, I'm wholeheartedly a believer in the mission of the school, and it's what I do every single day. And whenever I see things that tend to make families unstable or shaky, I get very interested in that and very involved, and I look for solutions because I'm an educator, and I have some leadership, have been given some leadership in this community, and so say the things that need to be said, remind the people of what it is that we need to be reminded of. This is how God uses me, as an individual, for however long he uses me. So we may be a little bit more intense about this because I've seen 1,200 SCS graduates. I've seen them grow up, I've been a part of those families. And honestly, a little more a part of some of the families than you might expect. And that's just how my life has gone, and how Allison and I see this probably a little bit differently than maybe some other people would see it. So, does that make sense? Okay. However imperfectly, Alice and I are trying to train our kids in the way they should go. Simply said. And the fact is that that parents are teachers. And so you are your child's teacher. That's the design. And all of us, are teaching children every day. There are children being taught on our two campuses, almost 1,000 children being taught on our two campuses. But you are also teaching children every day. Either actively and thoughtfully, not stepping on any toes, or passively and thoughtlessly. There is that option there. And probably somewhere in between on the spectrum, right? I mean, on our good days, very thoughtfully and actively, and on our really bad days, me included, passively and thoughtlessly. I just didn't think about what I was saying to my kid, or I didn't engage with my kid. We impart the essential skills, morals, beliefs, and faith in Christ. That's what we're doing as parents, as teachers. Our choices, including the communities we select and the friends that we encourage our kids to be around, they shape their worldview. It's happening. At our school, obviously, we go beyond just teaching skills. We encourage and instill values. Not all schools do that. A lot of schools keep that hands off. Private schools, public schools, that's between you and your parents. And we don't do that at SCS. It is very much we're doing it, actively doing, values, morals, faith, the things that a lot of schools are just staying away from because it's political or it's, whatever. And so I tend to think it's a wonderful place for us to have our kids, to be in that way. But you're still your kid's teacher, and they are your apprentice. This thought is supported by Scripture. It says in Luke 6:40, a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. Allison hates for me to say the words, but it is, apples don't fall far from trees. And so we, kids will be what they see. Apples don't fall far from trees. And it's that concept sticks in my brain. Kids are also like wet cement. You guys have heard this analogy before, probably. But we've got a finite amount of time. The cement is curing. It's in a process of curing. It's impressionable. It's specifically before the cement sets, I hate to say, we're pretty set cement here in the room. It's you can still leave an impression on us, but it takes some work to leave an impression on us. And so kids, it's pretty quick, and it can happen real fast. And we also know that certain experiences leave a huge impression, right? That's why I picked this, visual. That's obviously a huge impression that's been made on this wet cement. But as parents, we've sometimes allowed our children to be influenced by masters we don't know or respect. We just don't know, but we allow them to be influenced by something we don't know is happening. And so I'll contend today that social media has become a particularly dangerous master that we've allowed into our apprenticeship program. So you see why I'm setting you up with the apprenticeship language, because there is something there. As a Christian school leader, I've had a front row seat to watch the risky partner at work, and I've learned how it operates. So as we break it down this morning, we'll see two major reasons why social media is a dangerous partner. In what we are trying to accomplish. And those reasons are time and content. Okay? So as we get into the social media part of this, it's time and content. I want to break it down in your brain. I'm a teacher. This is what we're doing. Okay? So time. Social media is purposefully designed to capture attention. Maybe all things that you already know, but we need to go through it. Making it challenging to ignore. And easy to use in excess, right? Our brain gives us a dopamine hit when we receive digital notifications, likes, comments. We get more when we watch a squabble between other users, more dopamine whenever we watch a squabble between other users, even if we don't know them, I think about Tanglewood Moms right now just because, that's usually a part of our evening. And so... the endless scroll feature, in basically all social media apps keeps us looking, and we find rabbits, to chase as we're doing it. Whenever we do that, we find something that interests us, dopamine, So understand that language that the reward center of the brain is being used, manipulated by social media to manipulate you. That's what's happening, and it's why we go to it. It's why it's usually the first app that we open on our phone if we are a social media user, is we unlock our phone and for some reason we're tapping it. And maybe we don't understand that. It's dopamine is why you're tapping that. And so these apps even give us metrics, right? They can show us where we rank by number of followers, right? How many people is it that follow you on social media? Whenever kids are talking to each other, that's a regular conversation of, I need to work on my Instagram. I don't have that many followers. Like, that's a thing that kids say to each other here at lunch, and at our school. Those are sentences that we hear inside of the school. And so, and they don't understand that they're being manipulated. They don't get, that concept. They're immature, right? And so, but those apps give us, an understanding of where we rank. It encourages us, even unconsciously, to increase our ranking. It's just part of what's built into it. The more we post, the more comments we get, the more the app suggests our posts to other users, and the more followers we get, right? And so you see the cycle, the loop that is, that encourages you to stay on the app, right? All designed to dump dopamine into our brains and to keep us in the app. And that cycle is a very subtle and absolutely designed to extract your time away from you. We talked last year in a session that it's obviously it's all about money. It's very clear that you don't develop a social media app so that you can increase the good in the world. That's not what your design is. It's a business designed to extract as much money from advertisers as possible. Like that's the game, and it's just unfortunate that the way that it does it is it extracts time from humans and then says to advertisers, we have them this much time, and we know how to target your ad to an individual user in a way that will help them make a purchase. That is what social media is. It is using the interconnectedness of people, the network, to put targeted ads in front of you. Like that's what is happening. And so understanding that is a big, to me, is a big thing. Like that I know that helps me manage social media a little bit better than whenever I'm not thoughtful about that, that I'm just being used. Anytime I'm on social media, I'm being used for my data. If the app was free, your data is what's for sale. Like if you don't understand that or haven't associated that in your brain, it is absolutely something to know that if you didn't pay for the app, you're what's for sale. Okay? Everybody get that?
Yep.
You may have already known it. I like saying it that way because I think it really does resonate. Like, wait a minute, like that's what my reaction is to that whenever I first kind of came to that conclusion and understood that that's what the model is like, well, it had to be paid for somehow, and how was it paid for? Well, you gave it data, and that data is very, very valuable to the social media company. And so, I could use examples. If it's not written down here, I'm reminded by my friends that have known me for a long time not to say things that aren't on my script, so I won't say it. So there's a great stat that we know as teachers, and it's this. Oh, actually, there's a great stat that we need to know as teachers of our kids. You're all teachers of your kids. I already established that. But there's a stat that's kind of a smoking gun stat that we'll look at here, is that the best mental health and cognitive outcomes can be found in teens who basically fit this description. That they sleep for 8 to 10 hours a day, that they exercise for an hour a day, and that they are on devices recreationally for less than 2 hours a day. Again, longitudinal studies, over the last, we're still young at this, right? I mean, we're a little over 10 years in. And so you remember whenever I was praying, you are pioneers in all of this. Our kids are the guinea pigs in this. It is an experiment. And they don't know how it's going to work out, but the Surgeon General said, hey, whoa. And we all said, yeah, okay, we're distracted. We're going to keep going. And so, so know that kids who perform well cognitively, who are doing well, they are on devices recreationally less than 2 hours a day. And so my kids know that, and so they know that if they want to veg, for a little bit, they know there's a time limit on that. They know that they had to have had physical activity, during that day. And they know when their bedtime is and what time they get up every day. They know this stat probably better than you all know this stat, because we've trained them specifically to understand this. And they know that once they hit a certain time limit, that they're going to start feeling bad. Like we've helped them know that if you do this, there is a consequence, and here are what the consequences are. Like I think that's kind of like deep training, and can you imagine growing up with two educators? And there's my two kids. So there's the fourth grader and the junior. And so if anybody needs just the simple, straightforward deal, like taking that stat out of this room and like just knowing that, and your management, practices and principles, if somebody has to leave before the end, I've got like this long list of recommendations at the end, and I actually will give it to you on a piece of paper. But this stat is actually on this piece of paper too, because it's just one of those smoking gun stats that's like, if you just know that as a parent, you're better equipped to lead your child. Like, sorry, it's less than 2 hours, is what you'll get recreationally speaking on the device. Which is not what they want, obviously, I mean, they would like a lot more time because they're bored, right? I mean, you know. But recreational time on the phone or other screen can greatly affect the performance of your apprentice. Of course, acknowledging this, we must exercise responsibility as the parent. And this is hard, y'all, to say that to a group of parents. And it is like, look, it's your deal. I mean, ultimately, it's your deal. Navigating the wants of the child versus, what you want for them long term, And another quote that's coming into my brain right now that I say on a regular basis is that most people give up what they want in the future for what they want right now. And kids are absolutely, absolutely. That is the world of a child. I don't care what I want in the future. What I want is this, and it's now. Another shocking statement coming, but kids are immature, and it's not a problem to be solved, actually. It's a design they were given by their creator. And that's why he assigned them parents. So it's a window, right? It's a short little window. Immature people need an advisor who can help them learn about pitfalls and recognize boundaries. That's what we're here for. We live in a house. We're in a small unit together. We see each other and how we're living. It is an apprenticeship. And they need a guide. They need advisors. And ideally, they need a male and a female advisor, right? Who love each other and who are in it together. And it's not always set up that way, right? And you guys see how hard it is. If it's not set up that way and you have that experience, man, I love you. And I'm sorry that it's going that way. And you've got double. Like, you have to be both in that situation. And we pray for people who are doing this in a single nature or who are in a kind of an embattled situation every day. Because we know how hard that is on that kid who we love and are around all day, every day. And so we're with you. And if you're in that situation, I'm sorry. But keep battling and do the work of two. Because it is a short window. And we can do anything for a while. And so if you're in the room and that's you, or if you're watching this later and that's you, know that we love you and we are praying for you and we are partnered with you. Because it's hard enough if you got two who are on the same page and we're doing it together and we're, it's an ideal situation. It's hard enough. And so, but I wanted to make sure that I said that. So parenting in the digitally saturated world, setting limits on recreational screen time of 2 hours or less is crucial. Like, that's just a great place for everybody to start off. And let me say that it's crucial for the apprentice and the teacher. Okay? So the awkward parts of this is that we're not immune to this as adults. This is everything I'm saying today is transferable to all of us. Our best cognitive responses, our best every single day. Well, if we get an hour of physical activity and we sleep 8 to 10 hours, guess what? If we're on screens less than 2 hours recreationally a day, we do better too. And so it's good for us to know it. The second large risk of adopting social media as a partner in our parenting and apprenticeship is content. And so as adults, we often like it when our apps tailor themselves to us. We are mature, we understand what it feels like to be manipulated, and we have the benefit of experience and executive function, right? We are mature. And so maybe it freaked us out the first time when our spouse mentioned that we needed to put detergent on the list to open up Facebook and see an ad for detergent. But we've adjusted, right? Like, we still have Facebook, maybe. And there it is. It's still listening to us and putting stuff in front of us. Just-in-time advertising is what it's called. And so we can see the big picture, and we can back off if we don't like what's happening to us. Probably many of us in the room have a time limit set on our, Facebook. And since we're old people, we have Facebook. But and some young ones in the room have Instagram and all of the things. And if you've got Instagram, congratulations, you're young still. Okay. So, but if we don't like what's happening to us, we can feel it. We recognize it. We respond to it. That's what mature people do most of the time, right? Kids are still in the process of developing these skills. They don't yet have those skills. They're in a fairly fragile and precarious situation, which is something that as parents, we must understand. And so even though we're still in the first generation of parents who are dealing with the newness of social media, being manipulated by media is now common. We experience it every day. And I believe it's led to our country into a spot where we have a resurgence in extreme polarization. And so even we as adults are vulnerable, to really the algorithm. And so we'll talk more about that here in a minute. But just like you're careful with how much time you let your kids spend with that aunt or that uncle, because they're a lot of fun. Because you never know what he or she's going to say to your child to educate them, And so, I love my uncle, but he taught me some things. And so, allowing your child to engage with social media for more than what research prescribes will set them at the feet of an inappropriate teacher. That's what it is, and that's what it does. And so, choosing to be to not set a limit means that I think of it as living in Mira Vista, but then choosing to drive your child to stop 6 at midnight and just kind of let them out, and just see what happens and then drive away, and without a phone or anything. That's you're setting your child at the feet of a place that you don't know what it's going to happen. You don't know what they're going to see. You're not there to contend with it or to give them advice. You just dropped them off. If you don't have any parameters on that, okay? So see it that way. And I know I try to paint some kind of visceral images for that, but it's to evoke a change, and for you to realize what's happening. So let's consider that during the ages between 10 and 19, young people are in their prime learning years. Prime brain development years, prime learning years. It's second only to 0 through 3 years old, where kids are, their brain is doubling in size in that amount of time. But then between 10 and 19, all of the social things that happen and them understanding the world and their relation to it, that's all happening between 10 and 19. That's also the time where they start asking for a phone, right? Our 10-year-olds and younger, right? Because my wife is a 4th grade teacher. There are 4th graders that are getting phones. And so quickly after the phone, they start thinking, okay, what else is there? Because this only satisfies for so long. And everybody they see is looking at their phone. And surely they must be looking at something else than what I'm looking at, because this one is lacking something, is what kids think inside their brain. And whenever they see in social contexts people looking at phones, they say, I'm missing out. I'm missing out on something, and I would like to have whatever that is. And as they see their friends start getting social media, they say, that's it. That's what it is that I must be missing, that I'm looking for. And so, so this prime learning time between 10 and 19, that, by the way, this group is spending a lot of money to have learning happening, during that time. Not telling you anything you don't know, significant brain development's going on. But during that same time, they are hyper susceptible to social pressure and peer opinions because of what's happening inside their brain. They are fearfully and wonderfully made, and this is what's happening inside their brain at this time. They are building social relationships and peer connections. Of course, whenever you are in that susceptible time period, man, things are super meaningful to you, and they last a long, long time. And so it's a part of their God-ordained design. Social media then delivers them suggested values based on what other people their age seem to like, follow, and interact with. So those values obviously regularly clash with our Christian principles. It's still early, but research is emerging that shows the difference in the amygdala and prefrontal cortex of kids who are considered constant users. And the research labels a constant user anyone who's on social media for more than 3 hours a day. That's a constant using. And so for those of you who do have parental controls on phones and you look at screen time, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, my kid's on their social media for more than 3 hours a day, they are a constant user. As far as the research is concerned, they are a constant user. And the research says that their prefrontal cortex and their amygdala is a little bit different than a kid who doesn't do that. And so there is actual rewiring of the brain and development of the brain that is different for a kid who's on social media for more than 3 hours a day. Does that freak everybody out? Because it really should, and we should know it. But they have a much harder time with impulse control. with emotional regulation and are more susceptible to peer influences. Okay? That's the constant user. If you're thinking about your child, and I hate to personalize it like this because this may be your child, but if they struggle with emotional regulation, they can't get it back together whenever they have lost it for some reason, they just can't regulate. It's their phone. It is social media. That is what it is. And drawing back on that, it takes about a month, but they come back. So that's the hopeful thing in this is that we are so elastic, again, fearfully and wonderfully made, that by getting off and regulating, we can change. They are impressionable, but you can also smooth over the concrete before it's set. It's still malleable. So if you've been up to a point like, we've already screwed this up and we're going to have a chisel, no, they're not hard yet. And so know that there's hope, but you do have to be active in this. You do have to be proactive in this to be able to make a change that's in the best interest of your child. Their values are often embedded in and driven by social rewards and punishments. Kids who are on social media for 3 hours or more a day, they are driven by a different set of values. And they're not yours. They're not the ones that you raised them and trained them to have. They are living by a set of values that are pervasive in their life, right? And before, it was their mom and dad's values and their school's values and their church's values. But whenever we set them at the feet of the other, the other master in our apprentice program, they now adopted a new set of values because it's pervasive. If somebody's telling you the same thing over and over again on a regular basis, it starts to seep in, right? And so, sometimes most of the time our values are caught more than taught. And so if they sit underneath those values for that much time, they become their values. So know that that's how it goes. As a Christian parent, I would translate that to mean that kids who spend a large amount of time on social media are finding their identity in the opinions of others. Because it's opinion generated, right? It's like and dislike, that's opinions. And they are finding their value and their identity in the opinions of others, which we know to be a failing proposition. Chasing likes and approval and popularity on social media is associated with depression, low self-esteem, feeling pressured to act a certain way, being exposed to explicit content. It's like taking kids out of the world that you've worked hard to set up and placing them in one that has a whole different set of values than you do. So think with me about the values of social media, the social media world versus the Christian worldview. Big picture, faith in God is a replacement of who's on the throne. We've heard this language before as believers, that's the war that we fight on a regular basis. About me, is it about God? And that, he's on the throne and that we can yank him off of his rightful place and put ourselves in that spot anytime that we want to, and that's kind of the war that we fight in our sanctification process that we are going through by living life every single day, is we have those decisions to make, minute by minute even, right? The minute by minute basis of you have a choice to make here. Are you going to honor God with this? Or are you going to honor yourself with this? That's if you don't see the spiritual realm, the battle that's happening, it is absolutely real and it's happening every day and second by second, right? So I think about that in my walk, in my sanctification process, is that battle and that, who's on the throne. I regularly think about that. Probably because I'm in a Christian school every day. So if you're not thinking that way all the time, well, maybe your environment's probably associating that for you, and you're living something that, honestly, if you think about your faith, is that what's happening? Are you wrestling? Because if you're not wrestling, there's a pretty good chance that you're what's on the throne, because there's not a battle to be had there. So think through that, because your kids are going through that same process. Does that make sense? So social media is an experiment in tailoring and customization. Okay? It's tailored to you, it's customized to you, what you like, what you don't like. And so it's all about you. What do you like today? Who are your friends? What do they think? Here's some content that reinforces what you think. And what do you want to do in the future that you clearly aren't doing today? That's social media. Like, those are the thoughts that you have, that it has whenever it's driving you online. It's all about you. Well, if our deal is the throne and who's on it, it's not us. Like, we're not on it. Social media is all about you being on the throne. So how does it do it? I found this quick video that does a good job of kind of a succinct explanation of the algorithm. We're only going to watch like 4 minutes of it, but here we go.
Now, basically, an algorithm is a formula or a set of instructions to solve a problem. And when it comes to social media, recommendation algorithms are the computer instructions for how a given social media app decides what to show you. 500 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute worldwide. That works out to 720,000 hours of new content per day. That's 82.2 years. Yes, years. That's literally a lifetime.
Did you see this one? This one? What about this one?
And on TikTok, more than 1 billion videos get viewed a day. That's a lot of videos to sift through. And you probably have no interest in a bunch of them. Those pimple popping videos, no thank you.
And that's the point of the recommendation algorithm, to identify content that will appeal to you.
That's Alexander Walla. He's a computer scientist who studies how information spreads on social media. We chatted with him to help us better understand how social media recommendation algorithms work.
In order for them to learn about you, they need to collect information. So that's some of the pages you browse, some of the content you engage with is taken into account in those algorithms. And then they do a lot of sophisticated machine learning, a lot of mathematics behind the scenes, and say, okay, we think you're going to like this. And if you engage with that content, they give you more of that. So it's like you're telling the algorithm, you're giving it some feedback that says, give me more of this, give me more of this, give me more of this.
So these companies are pretty much tracking our every move. They're collecting data on what you're watching, clicking on, liking, commenting on, sharing, buying, how long we watch something, where we live, how old we are, etc. And they use all of that data to make predictions to serve us the content they think we'll like. Stuff like this 27-year-old male lives in California, likes sneakers and cooking, and hates gross medical videos. So show him more cooking content and don't show him people cutting in the cyst. Oh my God, it's gross. And with this data, they can sell super targeted ads to us too.
And if you stay longer there, they make more money, maybe through ad revenues, maybe make more money through the information they collect about you. But the whole idea is to find something that appeals to you, that keeps you.
See, at the end of the day, these social media companies are businesses trying to make money. And the longer you're on the app, the more ads you'll see and the more money they'll make. Y'all, TikTok made $4 billion from ads in 2021, and they want to triple that to $12 billion this year. In 2020, Instagram made $17.4 billion through ad sales. Y'all, that's like a lot of money. But here's the catch. These companies keep the inner workings of these algorithms under tight lock and key. It is their secret sauce after all. For example, TikTok publicly says that it takes into account shares, likes, follows, what you watch, and even how long you watch something. But we don't know for sure exactly how all these things are weighted or ranked to give you the content that's on your feed.
And it's not just what you are engaging with. These social media algorithms also take into account what everyone else is liking and sharing too. They tend to amplify the posts that have the most likes, comments, and shares, even if it's misinformation or lies.
So the algorithm is designed to put you on the throne, what you like, and then suggesting for you what you should like. If you take a piece of clothing to have it tailored, it basically will fit no one else, right? It's yours. And when you get used to having things tailored to yourself, we see very little value for things that don't fit. As if that's not creepy enough, it also knows you and then suggests through your demographic information by analyzing your photos. It suggests things that people like you like. So it's very suggestive programming. And in my eyes, it would be hard for a young person to fight against it because it's so subtle. And so you don't realize what happened, but you've been programmed. We've been programmed. So the social media world values brevity, frequency, time on the platform, egocentricity, trend hopping, edgy or risky behaviors, showing skin, looking beautiful, a lack of blemishes, saying crazy or controversial things. That's a recipe for growing influence and popularity on social media. You know, if you do those things, you will get a following and your stuff will be suggested. You will grow in followers if you do those things. I'm thinking that about 0 of these are values that, you know, if we can call them that we hope for at SCS or that we're trying to develop in the Christian worldview of a child. We're constantly talking about love of God and neighbor, service above self, honoring parents, honesty and integrity, humility and consideration, taking responsibility rather than placing blame, chastity, purity, kindness, and compassion. Could Christian values stand, you know, in any greater contrast to those values that are on social media? So, but let me also acknowledge that kids want it. Okay? So this is the elephant in the room, right? Is they want to be on social media. I also know that our kids are very smart, you know, and they want to know whenever they're being taken advantage of. As I have conversations with kids about this, they do go, "Oh, I don't like that," you know, and they will engage with you in it, and they will see it then happen. Because if you don't know, you don't really analyze that, you don't really recognize it, you don't think about it, and it's just part of the background. Until you've been enlightened, you know, how do you know? And so kids do like knowing this information. When I've asked our kids, like, who often say they don't like, actually they say they don't like social media. Like whenever, after they've had it for a while, they'll be like, you know, I don't really, like what it does, and, you know, there's some things and drama, and, you know, whenever you're talking to your kid about it. And so whenever you say, well, then why do you do it, right? Because that's the natural thing as a parent to say. They say, well, that's where my friends are, and they want to be with their friends, right? And so, so whenever I ask the follow-up question, this is the natural, I've had this conversation with a lot of the kids here at the school. And whenever I go to the next logical thing in the progression, which is, okay, so isn't it best to be with your friends like in real life? Isn't that better? They say, well, that's kind of awkward. You know, that can get awkward sometimes. And on social media, it's not as awkward, right? Because you can edit what you're going to say. You know, you can pick what you're going to do. You can jump in and jump out whenever you want to. Whenever a conversation doesn't really happen that way, it's dynamic, right? You don't know how that's going to go. But you do get dopamine whenever it goes well, you know, and you do get all of the same things that happen in the online world happen in the real life conversations. And whenever it's socially awkward for them, why is it socially awkward? Because they haven't had enough time to have those interactions, right? They haven't had enough of those interactions. Because if you have a phone, whenever you're going through that time period, what do you do whenever it gets awkward? Pull out your phone. And you unlock your phone and you retreat, right? I mean, this is what you do. You escape. It's called escapism, right? And so if you want to do your own research on these things, like, I don't know, I think some of that was crap that he was saying. Well, look it up and go with me on this and do your own research on it. Well, you know, we do it. You know, if you get an awkward conversation, you might check the time, you know, so that you can see, do I need to be somewhere else right now? And, you know, we use our phones as kind of an escape route at times. And so kids figured that out. If it gets awkward, they go to their phone. And they will all do it. And so it becomes socially acceptable, you know, to them in their groups whenever it gets awkward to go to their phone. And so, you know, I mean, you can see how it begets itself, right? And if it becomes the standard and the norm, then here we are. You know, I kind of struggle in social interactions. We're in the middle of it now. I mean, on college campuses and things like that, I mean, there are all kinds of campaigns to get kids to put down their phones, to try to socialize, to try to learn how to socialize. And so what do kids do whenever they're having a hard time with socializing? Well, they self-medicate. They drink. you know, because it takes the anxiety down, it depresses the anxiety that they have, and now they can talk to somebody because they are trying a drug or they are trying alcohol or drugs to try to give themselves an opportunity to be able to communicate, because they're so anxious about socialization. They've grown up on cell phones, you know, where they could retreat every time there was an opportunity. Does that make sense to you guys? You see the logical progression that's happening. And so, I mean, I say it's a logical progression. I think maybe here in this room it's a logical progression now. But it absolutely is what's happening. And you know how research works, that until there is, you know, a double-blind, random, you know, sampling, longitudinal data that says, yes, that's what's happening, then nobody's going to say anything about it, right? Do you think that the social media companies or the tech companies want anybody saying anything about it? Who's in charge of the data that we get? Okay, well, you're not going to know about this. Your kids will just be the guinea pigs on the experiment, okay? That feels heavy, but it's not untrue. So I think it's worth saying. A secret sauce for you all, like a great takeaway, is absolutely for you to allow your kids to have face-to-face time with their peers. Anytime they ask, if your child says, I want to go do X with so-and-so, say yes. And if they haven't done it in a while, say, when are you getting with so-and-so? And make it happen. Because that's how they learn to communicate. That's how they're the one kid at the table that whenever everybody's got their phones goes, what are y'all doing? You know? Because those kids have to come from somewhere. I would prefer that they come from Christian families, you know? That they notice, they recognize, they see what it is, and they say, we're going to do this differently. Because they want to talk. They want to have that good conversation and that good experience with their peers. And so that's been a priority of ours in our home for a long time. You know, like anytime Case or Arden says, I want to be with somebody, okay, yeah, we'll do whatever we have to do to get them in front of that other kid. And they have a great time together. And of course we're thoughtful about that, you know, and we vet, you know, who is that family and are they a part of our apprenticeship program and all those things. You guys see where I'm going? This is I tried to make it a very logical progression, so we'll see. But was it awkward for us and hard for us to have a 16-year-old that did not have a phone? Was that hard for us? Yeah, it was hard for us. Did I have the cell phone numbers of all of Case's friends? Yes, I did. And they would text me and say, hey, we're going to go do this. You know, can Case come? And we talked about that a little bit last year in our cell phone talk. Social media is a little bit different, but again, like, yes, it's going to require work on your part. It's a very short window, though. From the time that they start asking to the time you start delaying, you know, and saying no, to get them to the point where, okay, they can talk to people, you know, they can interact, they've developed these social skills that you want for them to have because they're your apprentice, you know, and you don't want them to be the weird kid that can't talk to anybody, you know? And so you see we have work to do on that side of it on our part. So we've made that a priority because there's a deep need there. There's an itch that kids want to scratch. They think they're scratching it with social media. It doesn't touch that itch. It's close to the spot, but it's not it. It's not it at all. So that deeper need is the God-ordained need. You know, it is a part of their design of actual human interaction. You know, where's the gospel shared? Actual human interaction. He designed us that way. And awkward kids who think they will scratch that itch on social media, it's just not going to happen. So I like to say the more you scroll, the less you'll find of what you're looking for. I mean, it's just innate. It's part of it. So God gave us what I've heard theologians call a seeking brain. You heard this concept before. All of us, to a certain degree, are curious about things. We wonder, you know, we think a lot. We analyze, we come to conclusions. You know, this is human. It's the rest of the animal world isn't not really doing this. And we were given reason, and it's something that God gave to his chosen, his chosen species, which was us. And so, so we do all of that because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And social media uses that design against us. It takes the things that we're curious about, puts them in front of us in a less awkward way, but at the expense of developing social acumen and skill. Okay? So, super interesting, right? Yeah. So far, has anybody heard anything that you're like, oh, that's interesting? Yeah? Is it new? We're all together right now? We're following each other? This is good? This is resonating? Kids are building an understanding of what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, your home and your school. We've said all of that. The social media world does not reinforce our value structure. And what are the consequences of that? So, getting deep here with your kids, a little bit more. Your problems for girls, who overuse. We're going to get very specific here, and so I'm standing in front of my thing, aren't I? It's very broad generalization, but again, these are of the high end users. Okay. And I didn't give this to you on my list, so let me get out of your way because I see some of you taking pictures. Yeah. So girls who are overusing, they're hyper-focused on emotional drama. Their life is friends, boys, gossip. That's it. They have a hard time stopping to do their academics because this is what's important to them. Some of that is a part of being a teenage girl, right? But regulation, being able to know when to stop and do what you've got to do and be able to calm yourself, it's easier for kids who are not on as long. They have poor body image issues. They have constant comparison and dissatisfaction that often leads to anxiety, depression, and the fear of missing out. So this is a regular thing. A lot of them are practicing disordered eating. And so, they have a hard time finding things to eat, and you're worried about them because it's like, aren't you going to eat? You need to eat more than that. Like if you're having those kinds of conversations. Pressure to conform to trends and lifestyles they see on social media. What's popular, what's cute. That I have to have that. That's a part of their life. Pressure to grow up too quickly, make adult decisions with the child's body and brain. It's a regular thing for kids who are overusing, for girls who are overusing. Poor academic performance goes along with it, and girls are often targeted by boys and men to share explicit personal content. It's free to open up an account, and so pedophiles run wild. From the guy that's been in the room a lot of times, whenever there's an issue that happens, it's also kids they know who are propositioning girls and going after them and targeting them, and often people they sit in classrooms with, right? That it's too awkward for them to walk up and talk to them, so they'll send them a message in their direct messages and ask them for pictures, inappropriate pictures. It's almost like saying hi to people, like a very awkward way to say hi to somebody that you're interested in. But again, if you have no social acumen, that seems totally reasonable. And it's happening. And I'm sorry to say, it's happening here. And so be sure that you understand that is happening. And so, how does it affect boys? I don't want to sit too long on it because I think you probably knew some of those things. But a lot of times people will overlook boys and like, oh, boys are tough and they'll be okay, rub some dirt in it mentality. But boys also struggle with physical comparison. They are looking at pictures of other guys. You'll see in a lot of guys' feeds, it's workout, and there are a lot of guys who are chiseled up in your son's feed. And of course they're saying, I don't look like that, but I would like to look like that because that seems like that's the attractive look. And a middle school boy, a high school boy, do they want to be attractive? Probably, And so, well, that's the look. you know? And so do I look like that? No, I don't look like that. That's what they're doing inside their brain, that constant comparison. Which leads to being dissatisfied with your gifting and ability. You know, somebody's always better than you, you know, at whatever it is that you do. You follow all these professional baseball players. Well, guess what they're better at? Baseball. You love baseball, so you follow the professional baseball players. Well, you suck compared to them, right? That's a reinforcement on a regular basis, comparatively speaking. So boys, you know, girls, whenever they see violence, they skip past it and it doesn't get suggested to them on a regular basis. Boys, the social media knows you're a boy and there's something inside of you that like you want to see a fight. The boys are like that. And so they get delivered things that desensitize them to violence. And they will watch MMA and blood and, you know, guts and all of the stuff that goes along with it. And they become desensitized to seeing that kind of content. And you don't know why, but your kid might be a little bit quicker on the trigger on anger. You know, well, they're used to seeing violence on a regular basis. It's the same kind of argument that we had whenever video games, you know, got violent. And like, well, do you see, you know, like the association between school shooters and how much time they spent on first person, you know, shoot 'em up games? There was a direct correlation. Like all of the school shooters were doing that and playing games and seeing it that way. Well, the same type of thing is happening where people are angry and quick on the trigger, and it is because it's suggested to them on a regular basis. They're also being overcome with pressure to live out the lifestyles they see online, which are not the lifestyles that you would have them pursue as a believer. They're also seeking out pornography, you know, the awkward things that we talk about here at SCS. But they're absolutely doing it because they're curious, they want to know. They don't have that opportunity, or, you know, it's not something that regularly happens here at SCS is to see a naked body. And so kids, boys, are very visual, and they want to see, and they will seek it out. And so they'll seek out pornography. It takes all of the awkwardness out of the possibility of that happening in real life. And so we see boys who are absolutely addicted to it. Not that girls are immune, but boys are absolutely addicted to it. Again, using the design, the fearfully and wonderfully made design against them. And so what do? Well, in the progression of pornography, seeing somebody that you don't know eventually rolls into you wanting to see somebody that you do know. And so as awkward as that is for me to say out loud to, you know, a bunch of moms and dads, that is the progression that happens in the porn world. And so who do they want to see pictures of? Well, that's who they solicit. They see, you know, people that they think are cute, and they ask them. And girls are like, oh my gosh, and they'll delete the request. Do you think the girls are going to tell you about that? They are not going to tell you about that because they don't want you to take away their phone. Okay? So, which is unconscionable for us, right? Like, you have to tell me whenever something like this happens. You will not know whenever this happens because they know the consequences, and they want their phone because they think, well, they don't have anything else to take from me. And so I've got to get to your application because I know we're going to be leaving soon. But whenever your kid starts asking, delay. You know? No, we're not ready for that yet. And that's going to push you. You know, it's going to push you for some time. And they're going to continue to ask, right? And you are the parent. You know, you're in charge of when this progression is going to start. But it is a progression. They will continue to push you further and further. That once you say yes, then it's how long? And then once you say how long, they say, when can I get more? You know, it is the progression. And so several of you are going to see it. So I will say inside the school, we practice this on a regular basis. Run, hide, fight. You know, that if there's an issue at school, we work on this. Well, you as a parent, man, run, hide, fight. You know, do whatever you can to get yourself in a situation where we're going to delay. We're going to delay, and here's my reasons. Whenever you do it, tell them. Put it off and tell them exactly why. Show them the list of problems that girls have. Show them the list of problems that boys have. And say, these are the things that I'm worried about. I love you too much. We're doing Christian worldview training. You're our apprentice. And here we are, you know. And I'm saying no because I love you. And so, you know, have worked really hard today to try to work you up to the point where you understand the logical progression so that you're equipped to be able to fight. Because your kids, they're going to fight you on this. And so, why don't y'all pass these around as you're doing this? Pass these around and back. Because I'm going to shoot through these really fast, and I know you're going to want them, and there was no easy way to give them all to you at one time. But, you've got to develop the plan. For those of you who are lucky enough to have not given a cell phone yet or don't have social media yet, what is your plan? Because going through this with our own son, our daughter's in 4th grade, we're not going through it yet. Oh, she asks, obviously. But we had the advantage of her seeing that her older brother did not get a phone until he was 16 years old, 23 days before his 16th birthday.
And he's okay, right?
He's still alive. And, he's a AP, class kid and, high A kid. He's doing great. But we had a plan. And we have a plan for Arden. She knows what that plan is, and she knows why. She could teach this part of the deal because she knows what all struggles girls have with these things. She's a 4th grader. She knows the information I'm giving you. And so, but develop a plan and have that plan be, look, we check in on the plan every once in a while. We're still on the same page, that you've got the great relationship with your spouse where we talk about these things and we have a plan together and we've made that plan. So that's the first part, just knowing it. Parental controls are just a part of parenting now. And so if you are giving a phone to a child, you have to have the parental controls set. If you don't, again, it's negligent parenting. I said that last year, that same kind of step on your toes way. It's absolutely the truth. And so giving your child a phone without parental controls set up on it is negligent parenting. You need your own password. You set what it is you're okay with. That's how you set time limits, is through having a parental controls set up on your child's phone. And it's not your child's phone, it's your phone. And so reminders on that. The app limits, the individual app limits, is where you will keep this to, Case, for example, we have Instagram, and he has an hour on Instagram. I can show you Case's Instagram because it's on my phone. And so he has an hour on it. He asks me every once in a while, can we back that up to 30 minutes? I've got a big test this week, and I don't want to look up and spend a whole hour on Instagram because I feel it. So we have that kind of level of communication, though. And so we've planted that potato, all right? So I get that. And if you're thinking my kid would never do that, well, you got to plant that potato. And so you're setting screen time because if we're going to be on phones for less than 2 hours recreationally, well, it's going to be set through screen time. It's the only way it can go. Egg timers don't work. It has to be digital stop, hard stop, and that you can't say, all you can do is ask for more time, and that's the only button you can push. And then you get to say no, whenever they come and ask. But that's, that's up to you. So if I look at Case's stuff right now, and we're about 10 minutes from being done here. If I look at Case's stuff today, like this is the search page on his Instagram, it is absolutely a reflection of what he's into. He's a fisherman. He loves, he loves modifications on trucks, and he's a video producer, or whatever. And so for his YouTube channel, I'm not all anti. But we're going to be thoughtful about this whenever we do it. And we're not just going to be consumers. We're going to produce content. If we're going to be on it, it's going to be for a positive purpose. Are we putting positive things out in the world for people to engage with? Whenever they are engaging with digital technology, is it something that is uplifting? Is it something that is good? Because we got plenty of bad. And so, again, trying to train my kids to be ones who are going to produce positive content is the way that we've gone with this, because they're interested. And so, I get it, but we're not doing it unless we're going to do it for His glory, not for our own glory. And so, so the management of it, whenever you say yes to social media, is you have to be familiar with how the app works, and what you're monitoring is their feed, is what they search for, and their direct messages. Okay? All of these apps have the same things. And so it takes a minute, not long, because it's very intuitive, because anybody in the world can use them. But you are looking at the search because it's going to suggest, right? It's suggestive search. So whenever you click on the search, you're going to know what your kid's been looking for. Okay? And if you've never looked at this before, know that you're going to be shocked whenever you go to search. And as you start scrolling through search, you're going to see some things that you wish you weren't seeing. Okay? But it is absolutely reflective of what your kid has been looking at on Instagram. Okay? And so where I will back off of that a little bit is if your child is on TikTok or is on Snapchat, search is more suggestive of kids like you search for these things. And so they may have not been searching that. Instagram is more true to what they've been searching, whereas TikTok and Snapchat are more like, don't you like this? So understand that difference. But you can learn a lot about your child and what their likes are and dislikes are, or not just likes, by going through the search. Their feed, that's just going to give you insight and wisdom of who they follow, what their friends are into, and you learn a lot through that, right? And we call it co-scrolling. And so I'll sit next to Case, who's a 17-year-old boy, and I sit next to him on the couch, and I'll say, all right, let's co-scroll for a while, and we look through his social media feed. He's like, Dad, this is awkward. And I'm like, yeah, I understand. and like, show me how this works. It's why I know so much about social media is because I sit there with my child whenever he asks for it at 17 years old, for social media. And I said, okay, lay out your reason why. Well, I want to promote my YouTube channel through Instagram, is what he said, and I'm like, okay. Is that what your plan is? Or are you just going to waste a bunch of time on it? Because I won't let you waste more than an hour. You know all the outcomes for people who are on it for more than 2 hours. And so my standard on this is going to be an hour. We had that conversation. And he's like, okay. And then he asked me for less time, right? So you see, if you do it, then there's a thing. Also know that your kids think that you only know about text messages, And so, you check their text messages. So they have a private channel of conversation somewhere. And a lot of the kids have it through their direct messages on one of these apps. And so because they don't think you're looking at it, they don't think you understand. And so that's where they take their private conversation and have it. Case at one point had his private conversation in a Google Doc. Okay, because he had to find some way to be able to communicate with people privately. And it was a Google Doc that he would say something and then it would get deleted by the other person. And then they would say something and then he would delete it after he read it. And that's how they knew they had a clean Google Doc that was, you could look at it at any given time. And unless you knew to go to revision history, you wouldn't know what was said. And so the kids want to do this. They want to communicate with each other. And if you don't have the go and no-go zones inside your house of where they can be on technology, you would know nothing about any of this, because it's so fast. It's a tab, on a browser. And so you have to know what's going on, and it takes time, but it's such a short window. I mean, in the grand scheme of life, Chris, it goes by fast, right?
It does.
So, but your kids, this is absolutely true of them. And so as you're scrolling through, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. They're chameleons and they absolutely want to fit in. And so you get to know those friends by scrolling through the feed and seeing what it is that they're saying and what it is that they're doing. And whenever they say, I want to go hang out with so-and-so, you know what that means. Because if you're in the kid world like I am, that's what that means. And so I'd like to update that to say, show me your feed and I'll show you yourself. And kids absolutely reflect that of the 5 people they hang out with the most. We have something to do with that. Your kids are going to make mistakes as they go through this, and I want to encourage you guys to not panic. Because like I said earlier, a month from now, it can be completely different. Your kids are elastic. They're not set. So whenever it goes wrong, which it will, take that opportunity to reset the parental controls, to set the app limit, to limit it or take it off. You know, whatever it is that you guys have come up with as far as punishment is concerned, whenever it goes terribly wrong. And then do it. You know, it's hard. Kids cry. You know, that's part of the apprenticeship program. And so don't panic. Whenever you panic, it's why they don't tell you. You know, it's why they don't tell you. And, you know, in our family, I'm the one that's not going to panic. Allison, she might panic. She's probably watching this. I'm sorry, babe, but you know it's true. So who, you know, so Case or Arden, they're probably going to come to me and say, I have a problem. And I'm not going to panic. And then I'm going to go to Allison and I'm going to say, hey, we need to talk about this, you know? And then we make a plan together and we're all a part of it. You know, it's kind of how do I include mom in this, you know, and because we cannot panic. We cannot panic because our kid is going to deal with it all on their own by themselves without the master, you know, the as they're going through their apprenticeship without somebody who can help them along that journey. If we are panickers, you know, so we can't panic. And it will be okay, you know, a month from now because it takes a while to detox. They're addicted, and so it takes a while to detox. And then as they get this new normal, they will look at you and say, man, that's actually been really good. You know, they may not verbalize it that way, but whenever you say, hasn't that been better? And they're like, that is like a glowing review, you know, that's a big yes. So this is what I just passed out to you guys. And since we're a minute away, you know, I could talk for another hour on all of this. But that plan, in-person relationships, we went through that. Tech-free zones, you know, where is the phone stored at night? You know, I mean, again, I've got a 17-year-old who comes to my room, and my wife and I are a room, and he plugs in his phone every night. He's 17 years old. He's going to college not too long from now. He's a junior in high school. Yes, his phone is in my room. You can do this. And you set up the parental controls. And by the way, phones don't go in bathrooms. You know, they actually don't go in bedrooms. And so our phones are used in common spaces at our house. And so you can set that up because what your kid's doing with their phone in their bedroom is something you don't know about. Okay? You set up those parental controls, the screen time on Android, that's called digital well-being. You limit the time. Start off with 30 minutes a day. You can always go more if you want to, but it's harder to go back, you know? So start there and see how it goes. If they don't ever say anything, leave it at 30 minutes. And guess what? Your kid is not going to have all of those issues that you saw listed out because it doesn't mean all that much to them. Kids who are kind of only on social media for 30 minutes a day, it really is not all that important to them. You know, they are able to keep it where it should be. If they're on it constantly, it takes over. You know, again, we've talked all about it today. So I hate making it a recommendation on one app versus the other because I really, if you can get by without it and nobody's asking for it, don't give them social media. Don't suggest it to them, for God's sakes. But if you're choosing, then choose Instagram over the other two because of what I talked about the suggestive language that the other two are written with. Cold scroll, you know, randomly. That's not something that they know that every Tuesday night you're going to cold scroll with them because they can do some things to update their feed and to update their search, and they're really wise. But check those things, and as awkward as it is, you got to model healthy use. If you're on your phone all the time, guess what? You know, I mean, you know, they can see it. And so kids can call out a hypocrite faster than anybody in the world, right? And then inspect what you expect. So I'll stay for questions, but actually, let me just pray because I know several of you are like, oh my gosh, this went right up to 10:15, and so you probably have somewhere to go. So I'm going to pray for us, and then if you want to stay and ask questions, you can. So Father, we do love you so much, and I thank you for these people, for their hearts, that they care, that they not only love you, but they love the kids that you have blessed them with. And so, God, I just pray over them that as they are thinking about these things deeply and pondering these things in their heart, Father, that they would commit above all to love you first, to get to know you better, because all else flows out of that personal relationship that we have with you, God. So we do love our kids, God. We want only the best for them. We see that this new technology can be detrimental in their lives if we don't help them tame that tiger. So Father, thank you for this time together today, for the insight and wisdom that we received. Pray that what we do with it is absolutely glorifying to you and you alone. We love you. In Jesus' name I pray.